Welcome to RHI's Sociable City Interviews, where we meet with global thought leaders on nightlife and the social economy. Today, we are with John Bodnovich, Executive Director, American Beverage Licensees. Hi, this is Jim Peters. I'm here with John Bodnovich, who is the Executive Director of the American Beverage Licensees that represents the on and off premise licensed establishments throughout America. And John and I have worked together probably for 15 or more years. I don't know how long it's been, but it's a great honor to have you here, John. You've made some great progress in following your work, and we just want to get a little bit of a background of your evolution, how you got to be in the position that you're in, and what kind of experience or education you bring to the role that you have.
Well, Jim, thanks so much. I'm happy to participate today and chat. We've been longtime supporters of RHI and all the work that the organization has done over the years. In some places where we have members, but really broadly throughout the country. And it's been fascinating to watch. As the nightlife, the nighttime economy, has become so much more of a commonly discussed and more of an accepted and important part of the hospitality culture of our country. It's always been there, but I think RHI has done a really good job of helping people understand it, the impacts, and then helping cities and communities deal with it. So we're really proud to work with RHI. My background with ABL is goes back about 17 years. The last decade or so as the executive director of the association. We are a 501c6 nonprofit, so we have a membership organization with members in states throughout the country, state associations that represent, as you mentioned, on and off premise beverage licensees, so bars and taverns and independent restaurants, and really lots of different venues depending on the state. And then off premise packaged liquor stores and in some cases beer stores in other states. So we really have a broad representation across the retail tier of the industry. Foundationally, our purpose and role is to serve as a conduit for our members to communicate with one another from state to state on retail alcohol policy and trends. And then we also serve to advocate before Congress and at the federal level, as well as just nationally within the alcohol industry for independent retailers. When I look at our role and ABL's role and what our members do, it's grounded in a few different important underlying principles. I think one is the exceptionalism, if you will, of the alcohol industry, alcohol being a unique product. People have to be licensed to sell it and retail it in the United States, whether that's on or off premise. It has two constitutional amendments dedicated to it, which is a unique thing, I think, for a consumer product good. Taking that kind of exceptionalism, all the rules that go with that and laws that go with that into account is something that we kind of base our approach on. The other two things, the first is hospitality culture, which I think is so important. RHI and its stakeholders talk about, but is really something that involves so many different aspects of the economy, regulatory, legal, law enforcement, and then just general culture. Is so important for people to have spaces, whether that's their home right now during the pandemic or out in public and in private venues when we're not quarantined, we're not sequestered in our homes. So that hospitality culture is something that we support. And then finally, the other pillar I would just talk about briefly would be responsibility. And it's in RHI's name, and it's really in the fabric of our members and what they do and how they conduct their businesses. For a long time, responsibility in the alcohol industry for alcohol retailers has meant not selling to anyone who's underage, intoxicated, who otherwise shouldn't have alcohol. It's been about preventing drunk driving and increasingly multi-substance impaired driving. Now there's another leg to that stool, and that is protecting and keeping safe staff and customers from a virus, a global pandemic in COVID-19. Which is really, over the past year has created challenges for retailers to be able to do that. I think most of them have met those challenges, but it hasn't been without much trial and tribulation. So those are some of the kind of basic principles upon which we approach what we do and how our members look at the world of alcohol retailing.
I haven't heard that in such a concise way before about what you do. And obviously, as an association representative, you're there to advocate, like you said, for the members of the industry. But as more and more businesses are confronted with the challenges of just keeping their doors open, and associations are dependent upon their membership. How do you see the evolution of the association and its role? I know that you've been doing a series of webinars just helping your members understand the basic facts about the virus and what they can do to be more engaged responsibly in protecting their staff and their customers. So you've taken a position of advocating as well as educating your members. But as an association and other associations that you work with, what do you see the evolution of the future of association, especially when so much of what made associations work were the yearly conventions or conferences where people were engaged with each other, and that's often a good place for members to get access to companies that provide products and services. I mean, how do you see the long term? Do you think that you'll return back to that same level of convention or association meetings, or do you think we'll move into a more virtual world? And to what extent do you see the role of the association and its funding base evolving?
You touched on a lot of different challenges, and I think with also some opportunities that are confronting association world in general, to include our own association. Um, I think that the from a 60,000 foot perspective, what the pandemic has done in particular has accelerated a lot of trends that were already kind of taking place. And one of those trends, I think, is in terms of the value proposition that associations provide to their members. You're asking people to join, to pay dues, and they're expecting a benefit. And for a long time, I think it was understandable and enough that you're part of something, and that something was aligned with your profession and what you did, and it supported those who like you worked in your profession one way or another. And there were all the ancillary benefits that came along with that. I think over the past decade in particular, and now especially with the way that the pandemic has affected the economy, people's bottom lines, their resources, their budgets, it is the value add, the benefit, the ROI of association membership is now much starker in terms of what folks want. It's not just enough to be part of something anymore. There needs to be some sort of return on that and what you're doing. And that can take many forms, right? You touched on the revenue drivers of events. And for us and for others, those are a big component. And last year was pretty difficult. We canceled our annual meeting, and we had to reschedule it for later in 2021. And there were challenges with that in terms of resources and what that meant for our budget, and what that meant for our association. I think that we're going to be okay, and we're going to come through it, and a lot of other groups are, but not without some belt tightening and not without some evaluating of what we do and what is really truly valuable to our members, and then beyond that, what we can do moving forward. I don't think everything is going to go back to the quote unquote normal of the past. I think from a meeting standpoint in particular, virtual is here to stay. And in a lot of ways, I think that's a good thing. It allows for a national group like ours, where we have people from as far as Montana, Wyoming, and Florida, and Massachusetts, and everywhere in between, the ability to carve out an hour, hour and a half of their day to sit in on a board meeting and participate virtually is something that we couldn't do with as great a frequency. But I do think it's going to be a dual track. We are going to revert to having some face-to-face meetings. I think part of that is the culture and nature of our industry, where if you're a brick and mortar retailer or a bar or tavern owner, face-to-face is where it's at, and that's kind of built into the ethos of those professions. And I think that's reflected in the fact that we want to go back to having some face-to-face meetings. We do plan on holding an in-person meeting in New Orleans in October of 2021. I'm hopeful that we're going to be in a place where people will not only be allowed to be there, but also feel comfortable in being there. But just to get back to kind of tying off on what associations need to do looking to the future. I think there's the other side of this, and that's kind of ridden along with a lot of the pandemic stuff, and that is um, cultural issues, social issues that are out there. Um, you see it in a lot of a lot of corporations and CEOs who feel compelled, perhaps, and I think probably rightfully so, to make statements and engage in social matters and social issues. And I think that associations increasingly are going to be called into that. We're a nonpartisan organization. We work with Democrats, Republicans on behalf of our members, and we don't tend to weigh in too much on things that aren't specific to alcohol policy. But when those issues creep into the world of hospitality, it's inevitable that you're going to need to be engaged in some capacity and try and stand up for what you believe in and what's right. So I think just moving forward, that aspect of association engagement is going to be more important, especially as we try to attract new members who are of a Gen Z or generation or younger members who as consumers and as individuals have indicated how important it is for groups they belong to or organizations they're part of to have a position and be engaged in some of those issues.
Final questions. I know you were involved in the whole music licensing issue, but in addition, I think your members, really are the front line of creating places for people to socialize. And so it's going to be the integration of music and dining and drinking that really bring people back together again. But how do you see socializing evolving, and how do you see the venues adapting in the future?
Let me pull up my crystal ball here. You know, on the music licensing side, you're right. We've been engaged in that. A lot of our members, they either host live music, they play music in their establishments, they take licenses so that they're in compliance with copyright laws. They support local artists uh, in doing that, and also hosting them. So we are engaged. Our position there is just writ large is a greater, more transparent kind of ecosystem of music licensing. I think it was great to see some federal relief go to music venues through the Save Our Stages Act, which was included in the last relief package in December. We've worked with some of the PROs, public performance rights organizations, BMI in particular, to try and communicate to our members how to deal with their licenses if they are shut down or if they aren't allowed are able to play music. So that is something that is important to a lot of our members and something we'll continue to be engaged in. But to your larger question, and maybe just to kind of wrap up, where do we see socializing in the next couple of years? First of all, I don't think that there is going to be a total evaporation of a need for a third space. We have work, we have home. In some cases, that's the same thing now for many people. For others, it's not. But I think that there is that need, that human need for a third space, and whether that's your favorite local pub or tavern, or a wine bar or a restaurant or a place where you can go and meet with friends or others or colleagues, that's important, that will exist. And continue a need for that will continue to exist. So I do see that need will be there. Um, I think from looking at it practically, I think there's another couple of quarters here in 2021 where things are going to be tough for our industry. I know that we're going to be advocating before Congress and in Washington for greater relief for the on-premise bar, tavern, restaurant industry as they work through the winter months. There was no specific relief included for them. While there were additional loan funds provided, no specific program passed like the Restaurants Act. So we'll continue to advocate for that. But I do think the next couple quarters are going to be quite a challenge, especially as the vaccine continues to get rolled out, hopefully. But I am hopeful that by the third quarter of 2021, there will be a rebound. You and I have discussed it. Others have talked about it. There's going to be a fair amount of pent-up, I think, demand for people to get out and visit that third space, to just to take a breath and to step away from their dining room tables where they work and eat and do everything else in between. I don't think people are going to forget, anytime soon what this is like. And I do think that hospitality venues are going to have to adjust to that and really adjust to different levels of people's comfort. Maybe there will be people that are comfortable sitting in a part of a restaurant or a bar where they're elbow to elbow with people next to them, and maybe there will be others that still feel the need to be have a 6 foot separation. And if anything, the entrepreneurial spirit, the hospitality spirit, the customer service spirit of a lot of these venues will meet that, and the owners will meet that, and the managers will meet that by making those accommodations. Because what are they if not hospitable, right? We're going to see those kinds of changes. I don't see masks going away anytime soon. Trying to think when are they going to take down the partitions at the grocery stores is probably going to be a little time off as well. But I think gradually we'll ease into that, and I'm hopeful by 2 years from now we'll have a much better handle on this. I will leave you with this thought. I think human interaction is important. And while much of it has been replaced through virtual interaction, like we're doing today, all that has done is strengthened how important human interaction is and how valuable it is. So in the absence of human interaction, I think we've hopefully come to appreciate just how important it is. And I think as one of the RHI board members alluded to, about social distancing versus physical distancing, such a great kind of perspective is that while we may need to be physically distant, we really still need to be socially in touch with one another. And gradually that's going to come back to an in-person sort of situation. So I'm hopeful along those lines. And I'm hopeful that we can revisit and do another one of these in another year,
Mm.
or maybe 6 months, or maybe 18 months, whatever it is. And hopefully we'll be talking about
Something
these.
different. Yeah, well, that was a great summation. Now, everybody has their little talisman that they hold on to that gets them through difficult times. What has been the one thing that has helped you to get through these times?
Probably just making sure that my family is staying safe and intact. I've got 4 kids and on 7 and under. So you know, kind of waking up every morning and making sure that they're going to be set for their days, whether that's in school or childcare or the next thing. Hope and the forward looking that eventually we're going to get through this, and eventually we're going to take that long delayed vacation wherever it may end up being.
It's been fun, John. I appreciate you taking the time, and let's schedule this a year from now and see what happens.
I look forward to the follow up. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Jim.
Okay.